Hello, I'm Michael Lennox, NPA Local Integration Lead, supporting the NPA in all matters LPC and PCNs. Thanks for joining us on our NPA videocast on the Wright review on PSNC and LPC contractor representation and support. We're going to share some initial thoughts and reactions on the implications of the Wright report. It landed last week. I hope you've had an opportunity to read it. There's an awful lot in it. It's a big old document, but please take the time and do so. So let's enjoy the next half hour in our company as we share some insight and reactions from NPA colleagues and members. So let me introduce you to our panel. First of all, our colleague Vikki Furneaux.
Hi, I'm Vikki and I manage Monkbar Pharmacy, which is a 100-hour single-site independent pharmacy in the city centre of York. I'm also the PCN lead pharmacist for our local PCN, and I've been working a lot on community pharmacy representation locally.
Thank you, Vikki. Next, our colleague Olivier.
Hi, everyone. I'm Olivier Picard. I'm an independent contractor based in Berkshire. I own 4 pharmacies between Reading and Slough along the M40 corridor. I'm also your NPA representative for Area 10, which is Berkshire, Hampshire, Isle of Wight, Dorset and Somerset. And I'll be here to answer a few questions for you today.
Thank you, Olivier. And finally, Reena.
Hi everyone, I'm Reena. I am an independent contractor. I have a pharmacy in Sutton in Surrey. I'm also an NPA board member and a PSNC committee member, and I've been very closely aligned to the Wright review as I was one of the independent contractors chosen to be part of the steering group.
So next, let's hear from our colleague Reena, who will share some insight and experience of being on the inside of the Wright review as she supported David Wright and the steering group through the process. Thank you, Reena.
Thank you, Michael. For me, the last few months have been very interesting as I was one of the 2 chosen independent reps to be on the steering group committee to support David while he did this review. And I think it was a really interesting and lengthy process. We went on quite a roller coaster actually throughout the process. And for me, at the back of my mind, at the forefront of my mind was always what's best for contractors. And I really felt very strongly about that, having been a contractor for many years and obviously paid levy to the PSNC and LPCs. And I really wanted to see that contractors got their value for money. And I was quite pleased to see the process that David took throughout the review in terms of the interviews, the surveys. And I was quite also encouraged by the honesty that people shared when they were interviewed and when they completed these surveys. And I felt that was really, really important because it was important that the contractor's voice was heard, and in particular for me, for the independent contractor's voice to be heard throughout the process. And I feel as a result throughout the review, hopefully you can see that when you've read the document.
Reena, thank you. So let's move into the questions now. So firstly, our colleague Vikki. Vikki, may I ask, what are you hoping for from the Wright review?
Well, I think the Wright review has proven to be pretty potentially far-reaching, actually, which and it promises quite a lot. So I'm hoping that it will deliver more local services and also a better transparency. It keeps using the words transparency and accountability, and I really hope that it can deliver on those things. It also promises to attempt to make all LPCs equal. It identifies that some LPCs are brilliant and have got some brilliant ideas and ways of working, and some LPCs have been struggling. And so I hope that actually the good practice is shared across all LPCs to sort of help those that are not doing quite so well. I also hope that there is a complete review of the LPCs, which will then obviously become community pharmacy locals from this review in order to deliver those better services and more equitable representation, I suppose, of contractors, and while still ensuring that there's the correct skill mix. So I think that it's really important as there's this review of on a more local level to ensure the skill mix in each community pharmacy local, especially if you're going to make the representation on it fewer in number, but actually greater in number of pharmacies represented. I think skill mix is really important, as well as representation from the different sectors.
Thank you, Vikki. Okay, same question. Olivier, what are you hoping for from the Wright review?
Thank you, Michael. I think there are several elements that I think we can extract from the review, and I think Vikki touched on it, but LPC governance is going to improve as a result of that review. There are disparities between LPCs, and myself are represented by a couple of LPCs, and I think they operate in different manners. So I'm hoping that LPCs are more aligned and have better governance. The other thing that I'm hoping is that by having chairs of LPCs representing pharmacy at the negotiating table, I think will help in getting better strategies. I think we'll have a stronger negotiating arm for all community pharmacies. And I'm hoping that this review will deliver that. I also noted that there is a note on rebranding. PSNC will likely disappear and be replaced by Community Pharmacy England. I think that that probably will help with increase the view of community pharmacy in the public eye. I think it'll resonate better when we talk to the press, and I think that will probably have a very positive effect. And I think finally the point that I think is probably key here is this review will hopefully turn community pharmacy into a united front, a united body. We are too often divided between the large chains, the independents, and the small groups. And I think the fact that we will go in a direction of this review is proposing, I think we'll see community pharmacy united for the better. And the more united we are, I think the easier it will be for us to deliver services.
Thank you, Olivier. And finally, Reena, what are you hoping for from the Wright review, please?
It's always hard to go last, isn't it? Because everybody said what you wanted to say. But I couldn't agree more with Vikki and Olivier, actually. They've made some really good points. And let's remember, this is the first review of its kind, in the history of LPCs and PSNC, and dare I say, long overdue review. And I had many hopes, actually, after reading it and being involved in the process. I am worried that there were people who didn't respond to surveys, for example, and I'm worried about the apathy of contractors out there. And I really hope that we can find a way to engage all contractors to understand what this review means, the ramifications of it, and what this means for the future representation and support of contractors. And I want to somehow bring people together because I really do feel, I think it's been said, that this is a blueprint for change and a much needed change. And you talked about transparency, governance. They're the two big things that really, really stick out, I think, throughout the report. And anyone who's not been involved at an LPC level or a PSNC level, it could be because of their frustrations around the lack of transparency and governance. And I think I'd love to see a new breed of people, a new breed of contractors get more involved and push the, what I call pharmacy utopia, the recommendations. If they all worked and they all fell into place and and everything was perfect, we could create pharmacy utopia. And as Olivier said, we'd be such a powerful voice if we were one big voice and one organisation that really stood out as Community Pharmacy England. And that's what I really hope for from the review.
Okay, so next question then. Vikki again, please. So what do you make specifically of the Wright review recommendations?
Well, I have read through all of the recommendations, and I've also heard about what David Wright has had to say himself about the subject as well. And firstly, I think there's a lot to like about the Wright review. Increased transparency and accountability, the governance structures, the increase in negotiating power alone is potentially huge for the sector. Policy development groups and sort of the leading more of negotiating rather than being very reactive towards the NHS, I think potentially leaves us with a lot to gain. On the negative side, though, I noted that both the NPA position statement and the RPS position statement mentioned a lot about local training, local investment, PCNs, and the Wright review interprets local in a very much less local way, actually, than the PCNs and the NPA were thinking. So in that sense, it kind of moves a little bit away from local. And the risks here are in ignoring the NHS focus on very local structure, and the PCNs. And I feel like we could stand to lose out there if it's not sort of taken into consideration when we implement the review, or if we implement the review. I was slightly confused as well about the makeup of the CPEC, the Community Pharmacy England Council. David Wright mentions a lot about equity and ensuring equity between independents and large chains and small chains. But I wonder if this is a little bit confused with equality. So there seems to be an equal view to review, like we have a certain percentage of independent contractors that should lead to a certain percentage of representatives. But I don't necessarily believe that this is equitable, because an independent contractor trying to represent 20 to 30 independent pharmacies is going to find that a much more difficult job, potentially, than a big chain contractor who's trying to represent 20 to 30 pharmacies who have a lot more in common. So I think there's some great stuff, but there's also some questions to be answered in how this is implemented.
So again, thank you, Vikki, and also now to Olivier for his reflections, please.
Yes, thank you, Michael. I mean, the Wright review had many recommendations, and it is hard to pick one or two because they're a group. But I think for me, the key really is the change in the structure and the governance. So, I pick out a few points which are very good. We're going to lose the word chemist. And the word chemist is an old-fashioned term, and I think this is probably right in my opinion. I don't like to be referred to the local chemist. I like to think that I'm a pharmacist. And if we go on the governance side, there are proposed limits into the number of years that a committee member can sit on there. Now, I think it's always right to introduce new members, but also equally, sometimes at LPCs, we struggle to recruit new members, and I wonder what an LPC would look like in a few years. Now, I've been on an LPC for many years, probably more than 12. Does that mean I need to be kicked out before this even starts and be replaced by someone else? We don't have the answer to that at the moment, but this is the sort of thing that I was thinking about. Also, there is defined roles between chairs of LPCs and employed staff from LPCs. I think I'd like to find out more about what that looks like and the implication it will have. But I think the key here is the negotiating team. Propose that there's going to be a team that helps negotiations. What does that look like? Who does that? Does the PSNC or Community Pharmacy England has a say into what is being negotiated? Can we review this? Do the chair of LPC review this? Or the exec for Community Pharmacy England review this? There's a lot of questions that are, in my opinion, not answered at the moment, but will no doubt be. And finally, I spotted that there were proposals for regular review. Now, obviously, this is going to be massive transformation. I don't think I have the appetite as a contractor to see the LPC and Community Pharmacy England being rebranded or changed every 12 years or every few years. And therefore, again, we'd need to have that answered a bit more. But as Vikki said, a lot of very, very good recommendation also in that review.
So again, thank you, Olivier. Really, really thoughtful. And now to our colleague Reena again, who will give us her thoughts on the Wright review recommendations, please.
I think I agree with a lot of things my colleagues have just said, actually. And Vikki, I think one of the big things that will be nice, definitely, is that the Community Pharmacy England can, for once, be proactive rather than reactive. And I too am quite encouraged by the formation of the policy groups. So that Community Pharmacy England has really got its finger on the pulse with things like IT, workforce, medicine supply, finances, all of those things that are really, really key. I also sort of understand your concerns about the local and the primary care networks. Being a primary care network lead myself as well, I'm trying to think how will that fit into this structure. And I actually think that the one thing we haven't mentioned yet is the Community Pharmacy Integration Centre. And I think that is something that actually will be key to success of local, the national provider companies as well that will go alongside that. Again, if we think about the pharmacy utopia, we can see, the national work will be really, really focused and strengthened by the policy groups, the better negotiating team. Then you've got the local side where you've got community pharmacy locals who are amalgamating resources and people. And then you've got the, the support for those people like the LPCs right now who are screaming out for HR support, comms support, finance support. All of that will be, internalised and hopefully be standardised across the network. And then I think what's really, really interesting for me and what I've got probably the most questions about is the Community Pharmacy Integration Centre and how we can make that work to be better. And Olivier, I kind of share your thoughts about, people on committees for 12 years. And I myself have never been on an LPC. And I've been a contractor for nearly 20 years. Vikki's never been on an LPC. And actually there's lots of people out there that have got great ideas and are really great contractors out there that have just never made that leap. And I really think by setting those limits, we could actually encourage new people to come on. And actually there's a lot of wisdom already in LPCs, and we haven't been very good at succession planning in pharmacy generally, and I'd love that wisdom to be shared with the newer generation of contractors. I really feel that's something that could come that's quite positive from this. I also share lots of concerns as well. There's lots of positives, but lots of concerns, and I really feel that we need to have more time to think about this, because this is going to have some very good positive outcomes for pharmacy, but there may also be some very unintended consequences that if we're not careful, we don't think about, especially for us independents. And that's why, as the NPA are doing, events like this and giving us more time to think about the different elements that are going to come out from this, how they might work, and how independence could be strengthened, so that going forward our voice is not lost.
Okay, so our third question then, Vikki, again back to your good self. What do you think needs to happen next in the context of you, your business, and indeed the whole sector?
Well, I think there'll be quite a lot of discussion around this going forward, and I think it's really important for us to engage at any point that we possibly can. So to make sure that we know what's going on in these discussions, and then to add our voices at any opportunity. And I think it's important as well for the organisations such as the NPA to do the same. And also I'd really like the NPA to consider whether they think that independent pharmacies have really gained equity in this new structure, and how we can be supported to make sure that our voices are heard. I always think it's really important for all of the organisations to focus on what we have in common. So what the independents have in common with the multiples and larger chains and smaller chains, rather than focusing on our differences. I think that the thrust of the report is about having one voice to enable us to be better represented, and I think it's important that the organisations involved sort of work on with that in mind.
So thank you again, Vikki. Olivier, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Michael. I think the future after the Wright review probably offers some great opportunities. Structure and sizes of LPC will change. Funding of LPC and Community Pharmacy England will change. There's proposal to you with electronic methods. We're doing this today. I think we've been doing it already since the beginning of the COVID outbreak. And I think this will transform the way we operate. I think that the communication is key with contractors, especially when we think of what's just happened over the last 3 months. Working closely, all pharmacy bodies and Community Pharmacy England, along with the Community Pharmacy local bodies, the new LPCs, I think will be key for contractors, especially when dealing with this COVID-19. Whether we have another pandemic like this in the future or we have a second wave, we need to absolutely be prepared to support the contractors in that respect. And that applies to both the Community Pharmacy England, but also organisations like the NPA. They're two very different things. I think the NPA has a key role to play in this department. I like the remove of proportional representation like they've done in Wales and Scotland. I mean, you will probably say that I would like it because I'm an independent contractor and I'm surrounded by a lot of company chemist association, and somehow at LPCs there is a bigger group of pharmacists that represent this company chemist association. But currently it is not the case. So we'll watch out for the space for that. And finally, the negotiating team and going down the route of a GPC model where some key people, and I think the key people are really the key here. They need to be the right people. They would be able to work closely together for the interest of all community pharmacists, and also hopefully avoid duplication of effort. I'm sure it happens today when we work at local level and national level. So I think that will probably offer some great opportunity in the future. A lot to watch out for the future. And I think the future is bright if it's done correctly with the right people in the right place.
So again, thank you, Olivier. And finally, to Reena for the same question, please.
Thanks, Michael. I think for me, because I wear different hats, for me as a contractor, how I'm looking at this and what I want to do next is thinking about how I could become one of the agents for change. I know in my area, for example, I want to get in touch with my LPC to see how they've reacted to this, think about how they're thinking about potential change, potential mergers locally as well to create a larger community pharmacy local structure in our area. And so that will be my first step as a contractor. As a PCN lead and as somebody who's interested in contractors being more aware locally, I'm actually just really worried that people haven't read it and haven't understood it. I guess because I was so involved with it, on the day it was released, I was on my WhatsApps, on my social media feed, waiting for people to tell me about things and tell me their opinions on things and what they thought about it. And I didn't get much actually. And so that's what's worrying me a lot. And I think the NPA's got a really big role here in dissecting this for our members, because not every contractor has time to read the 120 odd pages. And not everybody has understood the politics up until now, maybe, or the way that things have worked. And so we've got a journey to take people on. And I really feel that's something that we have to do next for pharmacy. And I couldn't agree more with Vikki as well, just about making sure that the independent's voice is heard and that we have the opportunity to, for our views to be heard and that we're not disadvantaged. And I think, agreeing with Olivier as well, we need to do what's best for pharmacy. Often we always think about independence, multiples aim, a CCA aim, and actually just wouldn't it be great if we just thought about what's best for pharmacy rather than our individual business models and back offices or companies that we represent. And I think that really has to happen next in terms of a mindset change and thinking about a bigger picture so that we can truly have that equality and the justice that's needed, and a pharmacy sector that's thriving and well represented from contractor level all the way up. And I really do feel that if we get this right, this is about giving power to the people, so power to the contractors who are paying the money for these organisations to exist, to represent them and support them, and that would be what I would like to see happen next.
So to conclude, please can we suggest the following steps? Read the review and reflect on it. Capture your questions and reactions. Chat to your colleagues, compare thoughts. Look out for further NPA guidance as your NPA team and the board work through and create position statements. Please register for the PSNC Wright review session due to be held on the 29th of June, and do submit your questions to it. Thank you very much for your time, and it's been a pleasure being with you virtually.